Hi, my name is Alex, and this is lesson 25. For this first part, we need to evaluate the expressions. So for number one, we have a square root of 25 times the negative 1. And a square root is basically the inverse of taking the square of something. So what this is asking us is what times itself or what squared equals 25. So if we look at the factors of 25, we have 25 and 1 and 5 times 5. So the square root of 25 is going to be just 5. So it's going to be negative 5 for our answer. For number 2, it's the same thing. It's asking us what times itself equals 16 or what squared equals 16. And 16, the factors are 16, 1, 8, 2, and 4 times 4. So the answer for number 2 is just going to be 4. This next part, you're going to use the square roots to solve quadratic equations. So when we're solving, we always have to isolate our variable. So for number 1, to get this x squared by itself, we need to get rid of the 2. And since it's multiplying the x squared, we could do the inverse operation, which is dividing. So divide both sides by 2. So the 2's cancel out here, and it becomes x squared equals 8 divided by 2, or just 4. So here, we have x squared equals 4, or x equals square root of 4. And the factors are 4 and 1, and 2 and 2. So x is equal to 2. For number 2, same thing. We need to isolate our variable of m squared, or just m. And to do that, we need to get rid of this negative 18 on this side. So we did the inverse operation, which is just addition. So add 18 to both sides. And this way, these cancel out to just 0. And m squared equals 0 on this side as well. Now, m is going to equal the square root of 0, but this is just 0. Anything times 0 is going to equal 0. So 0 times 0 is just 0. So that's why m is equal to 0 here. For number 7, we have to do the same thing, isolate the variable. So in this case, we can first start by getting rid of this 12. And we do that by subtracting both sides by 12. So this cancels out to 0, and it becomes 5w squared equals negative 20. And we need to get this w squared on its own. So if we divide both sides by 5, we get w squared equals negative 4. So w equals square root of negative 4. But the problem is, this is just going to be no solution. And the reason for the answer being no solution in this problem is that you cannot have a negative you can't have a negative inside the square root. The square root is basically saying what times itself equals a number. But if you're multiplying two things, never multiply to a negative. So let's say this is x squared equals 25. Then 5 times 5 equals 25. Or 5 squared equals 25. But watch what happens if we turn this 5 into a negative. It becomes negative 5 times negative 5 equals 25. This positive 25, and it doesn't equal negative 25. There's no way for you to multiply the same number to itself, and it will come out to a negative exponent. So if you ever have a negative inside a square root like this, it's just going to be no solution as the answer. Okay. For number 8 here, we have 2x squared plus 11 equals 11. So we need to isolate the x squared by subtracting both sides by 11. So this becomes 0. And 2x squared, or x squared, is going to equal 0. And x is going to equal square root of 0. And this is just 0 for x. Okay, so this next part is just the same thing, solving the equation. Here we have a 3x squared minus 3 equals 0, and we could isolate this x squared by adding 3 to both sides. So 3x squared equals 3. Divide both sides by 3, so it becomes x squared equals 1. X equals square root of 1, and 1 times 1 equals 1. So x is going to equal 1. Okay, for number 2, we have 2x squared minus 32, so we could isolate the 2x squared by moving the 32 over by adding, and divide both sides by 2, so it becomes x squared equals 16. So x equals square root of 16. And 16, like we did before, the factors are 16, 1, 8, 2, and 4 and 4. So x is going to equal 4.